Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Open Mainframe Project, How Open Source is Powering the Modern Mainframe. My name is Emily, and I'm a member of the team here at the Linux Foundation. Before we begin, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded, so if you need to drop off at any point, we will automatically send you a link to the recording via email within a day or two. At the bottom of your audience console are widgets that control all the movable and resizable content windows. You can click and drag the lower right-hand corner of each widget to change the size and can move the windows around to customize the layout to your preference. Starting with the icon on the left, the red film reel controls the audio for this event, or it allows you to fast forward or rewind if you're watching this on demand. The purple Q&A widget allows you to submit questions at any time during the presentation. We will try our best to answer as many of them as we can. If you're watching this on demand, you can still submit questions and we can respond via email. The dark blue chart icon controls the slide viewing window. The green document widget contains links to additional resources, such as a link to today's slide deck that you can download right now, as well as other links around the Open Mainframe project. The light blue person icon opens a window where you can learn more about today's guest speakers. The teal clipboard allows you to access our survey widget, which helps us collect valuable feedback. Please take a moment at the end of the presentation to answer a few questions about today's session. And finally, the yellow question mark opens a help topic window in case you experience issues with the console. If you're joining us on a non-Ubuntu Linux machine, please keep in mind you may experience lags in slide advancement, and refreshing your browser might help. You can join us on Twitter using the hashtag LFWebinar, and don't forget to follow us at @Linux Foundation. As I mentioned, keep an eye out for an email from us in the next day or so with a link to today's recording. That takes care of our housekeeping info. I'm pleased to introduce today's guest speakers. We're joined by John Murdock, Director of Program Management here at the Linux Foundation. We also have Stephen Dickens, Worldwide Sales Leader for Linux One at IBM. Also joining us is Len Santalucia, CTO of Vicom Infinity. And finally, we were joined by Mike Riggs, Manager of Systems and Database Administration for the Office of the Executive Secretary at the Supreme Court of Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Stephen, I'll hand it over to you.
Fantastic, Emily. Thank you very much for that fine introduction, and welcome to everybody on the call. As you were saying, we've got a stellar panel with us today. I'm going to be your master of ceremonies. We've got some charts we're going to walk you through. But this is going to be pretty interactive, and hopefully you can pose us a bunch of questions on the Q&A. So what I'm going to do is spend some time here just introducing and picking up from where Emily started. We've got my good friend and colleague here, Len Santalucia from Vicom. Do you just want to say hello and introduce yourself, Len?
Yes, Stephen, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Len Santalucia. I am the chairperson for the Linux Foundation Open Mainframe Project, and I also am the CTO of IBM Premier Business Partner Vicom Infinity. Thank you very much for attending. Look forward to presenting and talking with you today.
Fantastic. And I'm going to come to you first, Len, when we sort of move through some of the charts. Mike and John, do you just want to position yourselves briefly and do some introductions for the team?
Thanks, Steve. It's Mike Riggs. I want to thank you guys for letting me participate in today's webinar.
Fantastic, Mike. And where are you from? What organization? Just for the listeners.
I'm sorry. I'm with the Supreme Court of Virginia, centered in Richmond, Virginia.
Fantastic. And John, do you just want to quickly position your role, and I'll get us into the material?
Sure. My name is John Murdock. I work here for the Linux Foundation. In this context here, I'm the director of the Open Mainframe Project, so help run all the day-to-day activities, marketing, and coordinate a bunch of efforts across the community, and really excited to be a part of this webinar.
Fantastic. So as I say, fantastic panel here with us. So really going to move through onto this next chart and this sepia-toned picture. So we're going to handle this straight up and position throughout this session that this is not the mainframe that we're talking about. We're going to tell you a little bit about the technology. We're going to tell you a little bit how people are using Linux and open source. But we wanted to start with this picture first, really to just, I suppose, deal with some of the perception challenge. We talk about believers and non-believers. in this platform, and certainly those non-believer category would be the people who would maybe associate the mainframe with this image. So what we're going to do is, throughout this session, we're going to try and make this as interactive as possible. We're going to really try and get you guys to participate on the line. So in order to do that, we're maybe going to take some temperature on this perception and then replay those results 2 or 3 times and ask you to maybe take some of this survey as we go through to see whether we've changed perceptions. I think we'd all agree this is probably a starting point for a lot of people in the community, and what we want to do is really sort of check that perception. So we've got a quiz and a poll here. What we're doing, as I say, is trying to get a temperature check. So what we'd like you to do in the platform is really tick one of these boxes, or tick as many that as apply. So which of the following describe mainframe computing? More expensive to operate, more difficult to use, limited software availability, incompatible with other open source systems, limited to using outdated languages, misunderstood. Some of the more positive ones here: constantly available and reliable, secure, scalable, performant, and can integrate with modern computing systems and applications. We're looking for you guys on the call to get in and give us some feedback, and then we'll replay those results through to you, and then hopefully change your perception throughout. So if you can start to click there, we'll come back to those results in a few moments. So Len, you've been with this platform since the very beginning, back in the 99 days of when we launched Linux. Can you just sort of give the people on the line a bit of a perspective of what the modern mainframe means to you? And we've got some detail here on the charts, but just give a personal perspective to it, if you would.
I'd be happy to, Stephen. Folks, in my most humble opinion, there has never been a better time than to have a mainframe in your IT organizations today. And the reason why I say that is because if you remember that black and white picture that you saw on the previous chart before the question, the mainframe was announced back on April 7th, 1964. I happened to be 11 years old at that time, and my grandfather and father took me to see the announcement at the original lab and plant in Endicott, New York, where I became incorporated in 1924. Being a third generation IBM, it gives me a different perspective because I have seen it from its beginning, where I touched that first mainframe when I was a little boy, to the time I've been touching it as of late with the Z14. It was announced here in July of last year. And this is very, very cool as far as I'm concerned, because if you take a look at the world we live in today, there are many ways you can get information and get touched. You have LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, Instagram, Twitter, to just name a few. But I wanted you to think about it in this perspective. What if you were to turn off all of those capabilities, solutions, implementations? The world would be a little unhappy, but the world would keep on going forward. If you were to turn off, Stephen, all of those mainframes that were out there installed today, something drastic would happen to this world. Airplanes would fall out of the sky. There would be a financial crisis because nobody could get at their money. No one would be able to get insurance payments or report insurance claims. No one could go to a retailer and buy what they might like to buy. There'd be no way to do charge cards because places like Visa and those, nobody could get into a hotel room in the Starwood or Marriott or Hilton or any of them, because they're all based on mainframes. So if you were to turn them all off, the world would be in utter chaos and terrible, terrible. But that's how dependent the world has become on these systems. And they continue to progress and have changed from that black and white picture to what you see in front of you today in this chart. The modern mainframe is by far the most flexible, agile, reliable, secure, scalable system that anybody has to offer.
So Len, just sort of picking up on it, and every time I hear you tell some of these stories, something new comes through for me. Maybe just give us a little perspective of what that sort of last 3-4 years looks like on the platform. I think people would maybe associate with this being the bedrock of sort of traditional business. But what does that last sort of 2, 3, 4 years look like purely from an open source point of view for you?
Well, again, I had another very fortunate experience when I was with IBM. I was there, Stephen, as you know, for almost 31 years, and the last 10 years I've been still kind of with IBM as an IBM Premier Partner. And what happened was, in 1999, IBM finally decided and got it that, it really had to get involved with Linux and open source. And it was back in that time frame of 1999, but the first few years took a little while for people to become, acclimated with it, comfortable with it, and to really see where it might be positioned. But around that 2004 time frame, as you can see on this chart, it started really, really taking off. And it is now at such a exponential growth because of things like being able to run solutions like Docker and blockchain, and its ability to pervasively encrypt all of the data real time and not worrying about any kind of application changes, any kind of in-flight or data at rest. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And the growth is continuing in this area. Many, many people are now getting involved with it that never had mainframes. You ought to see there's people that never had mainframes now considering the mainframe. It's not just only the present mainframe,